It's been about 2 weeks since scientists announced the discovery of the Omicron variant. Some key questions are still unanswered about this variant. The biggest concern being whether vaccines are effective against this new variant. While other countries are already administering booster shots, 93% of the African population haven't even received second dose of COVID-19 vaccine. Meanwhile, in Kigali, a two-day public stakeholder engagement meeting on partnerships for vaccine manufacturing in Africa has been concluded. RBS Gloria Mutesi set up with Dr. Nikes Ndembi, the head of the science office at the African CDC, to discuss, among other things, the outcome of this two-day meeting.
We have established at least 6 work streams within the partnerships for Africa vaccine manufacturing, which we call now PAVM, around market design and demand intelligence, around financing, access to finance, around regulatory. I mean, that's regulatory really strengthening capacity of our national regulators to be able to address issues around pathway for emergency use authorization. And lastly, around infrastructures. Because that's quite important that we do have build reliable infrastructures that we can actually be able to sustain the entire vaccine ecosystem. And lastly, I think, which is not the least, around research and development and talent development, to be sure that we have a pool of African scientists and researchers that can be able to lead some of these components around clinical trials and also phase 3, phase 4 clinical trials that will enable those vaccines move from phase 1 to really delivery. Over.
Well, some people would argue that PAVM has a bold goal of enabling vaccine manufacturing industry in Africa to produce and supply 60% of the total vaccines needed on the continent by 2040, up from less than 1% currently. Would you say that this is achievable, and where are we in this regard?
No, extremely achievable. It's quite important that we all look at what we have so far developed as part of the framework for action. I mean, the meeting in Kigali is a little bit a kind of soft launch of that framework for action with really His Excellency President Kagame really leading that effort as one of the, at least the champions, if you look at it, even chairperson of AUDA NEPAD. So currently we're looking at 22 diseases with epidemiological significance. So it's not only COVID-19, it has to be very clear. And we are encouraging actually member states to be able to diversify that platform, mRNA vaccines, mRNA platforms, and other vaccines that are probably or other platforms that will enable us achieve that 40%, at least 60% target by 2040.
In a race to produce vaccines as fast as we can on the continent, many initiatives from different countries are being formed. So won't this cause more trouble than it's worth?
I think that's exactly the purpose of PAVM, to be able to have a coordinating role, okay? And the African Union, using our convening power, we actually try as much as possible to bring all those, I mean, all member states, at least that have expressed an interest to vaccine manufacturing, are on that same table. That's why we have that framework for action that had been mentioned, and that which the soft launch just happened a couple of days on the 6th and 7th. Then now, once we have it, we'll syndicate it. So we're going to actually have meetings with different governments and member states to be able to ensure that we have a buy-in into that framework for action, which is quite critical to avoid what we did mention. We are actually lucky that there are several other instruments that are just coming into play. The African Medicines Agency that just came to force a couple of days ago. Then we have the African Continental Free Trade Area, which you can leverage on to be able to avoid like that competition that we're just trying to, now we're discussing. Then that market design and demand intelligence work stream. It's very critical, and it's extremely critical so as to ensure that all member states we have access to the 1.3 billion people that will need vaccines on the continent, either for childhood immunization, for pandemic threat like this, SARS-CoV-2 stroke COVID-19, and then other diseases. I think we all have space for this industry on the continent. I just want to mention that up to quarter, I mean at least 25, we represent 25% of the vaccine market globally. So it means that our production should be able to meet the demand on the continent, and even beyond the continent. Not only having African solution to African problems, but African solution to global problems. India has been the powerhouse for vaccines across the globe. But Africa could also be a powerhouse of vaccines for the rest of the world. I think we start thinking really bold and move this initiative forward rather than looking at internally, inward only. So I think that's probably the best way. That's why African Union, with the convening power, we're moving this agenda, coordinating it without controlling. So we need coordination, cooperation, collaboration, and good communication to be able to move this agenda.